Welcome everybody, it's Sharif Madavi with another episode of Pep Talk, and today I'm so glad to have with me in the studio Mary Lupo. Mary is a dermatologist in New Orleans, Louisiana, native New Orleans, and Mary, so glad to have you.
Thank you, Sharif. It's always good to see you again, and in fact, I'm sorry that I couldn't see you at Jazz Fest this year, but next year, right?
Next year, absolutely. Well, Mary, just tell everyone, because for those who haven't met you, just give them an idea of who you are and a little bit about your practice.
So I began my practice right out of residency in 1984. I'm a board certified dermatologist. And when I was a senior resident and chief resident at Tulane Medical School, in the residency program in dermatology, as chief resident, I started a resident cosmetic clinic. There really hadn't been anything like that. And the reason I started it was there were three things that were going on that I thought there was a market for. One was we got a new dermal filler, the first of its kind. Back then it was called Zyderm. And then there was a second called Zyplast. And I wanted to incorporate that into our treatment trainings as residents. And I also wanted to train on a technique called sclerotherapy, which is a cosmetic treatment to improve leg veins. And I also wanted to get really good at chemical peels because back then we didn't have lasers. We basically were already at Tulane doing dermabrasion, not microdermabrasion, full wire brush dermabrasion. And I wanted to have something that was a little less aggressive. And chemical peels are a little less aggressive than full dermabrasion.
Yeah.
And so when I started that clinic and then it was time for me to go out on my own, I realized that I wanted right out of the gate to be branded as a cosmetic dermatologist. Of course, I always saw medical problems as well, you know, psoriasis and acne, rosacea, rashes, but I always had an affinity for aesthetics and used a lot of Retin-A. Back then, Retin-A was just getting started. So I opened the Lupo Center for Aesthetic and General Dermatology. And it wasn't a coincidence that I put the aesthetic first because that was always my focus.
Yep.
And I continue to teach the residents at Tulane with a clinical position. I'm still clinical professor of dermatology at Tulane. I continued to teach that clinic for 30 years where I wanted to teach the residents what I was learning in my practice. And in 2005, I and Dr. Ken Beer, a dermatologist in South Florida, started something called the Cosmetic Boot Camp, which is a concentrated CME course to help board certified derms, plastics, to hone their non-surgical treatment skills.
Good. No, it's an incredible career you've had, and we were fortunate to meet a number of years ago. Well, you're in New Orleans, and we know that's recently been one of the hot spots. Could you give us a little just overview of what's going on in the community right now?
Well, they believe that because of the Mardi Gras activities, that is one of the reasons why we've had such a spread and we're a hot spot here in New Orleans. In addition, New Orleans, we're not noted for our healthy diet and lifestyle. We tend to indulge, imbibe, we party, we live large, as they say, and we have a very high incidence of kidney disease, hypertension, diabetes, obesity, chronic lung disease, smoking, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, everyone knows that those are underlying risk factors for morbidity and mortality with this coronavirus. So it first got bad in a facility that was a combination facility of a retirement community of active ambulatory retired people. Assisted living was the second portion, and there was a nursing home. Well, the portion that had the healthy, vibrant 70-plus-year-olds living there, those are the ones that got it first.
Wow.
And they got it because they were going to the Mardi Gras balls, because they were very social people. We lost about 5 retired physicians from that one facility.
That's sad.
Got involved in other communities. Tulane Medical School lost a couple of allied workers, not the healthcare people, but like maintenance people and stuff like that. So we've had a lot of problems. We've had 3 of the regional transit drivers perish from the COVID. So and we've had grocery stores, one big grocery store in town shut down for 2 weeks because they had 27 employees get it.
Incredible, incredible. Well, I know New Orleans
It's
has been hit hard.
Yeah, it's a highly contagious virus. I'm looking forward to the day where we understand why this virus has a contagion level so bizarrely high, and what is the mechanism why it is so vicious in some people as far as the course of their illness.
Oh, me as well. I think we're all wanting to know that. And so what about in your practice? You've practiced for many years. What changes have you made already to just adjust and adapt given what's been happening?
Well, for a few days, what we did was we took out half of the chairs out of the waiting room.
Mm-hmm.
We were staggering bookings a little bit differently than we normally do. We were telling people not to bring anyone to accompany them to their visits. And we basically no longer had a reception/waiting area. We put people immediately into a room. We had the patients immediately wash their hands. But first we washed our hands and showed them the proper way to wash their hands. At Instagram account, Lupo Dermatology, I was one of the first doctors to actually post the proper way to wash your hands when you really don't want to get a respiratory infection. So we washed our hands. We had the patient wash their hands. And then we, of course, took temperatures for every employee when they came to work. We had the patients have their temperature taken. We asked every patient, how are you feeling? Are you feeling ill at all? Have you had any exposure? Those sort of things. So that's what we started to do. But then, starting on March 19th, we were shut down, basically.
And you've been pretty much shut down ever since?
Yeah, because the governor does not think that the injections that I do are essential. And we do have the office open for severe medical problems and some telemedicine, but the vast majority of what I do is elective, choice-driven aesthetic procedures. Mm-hmm. So I am about to enter my 5th week of not working.
Well, knowing you, I bet that drives you crazy.
It does.
So let's look forward.
Give me something to do this afternoon.
Good. Let's look forward. As we kind of come out of this, we move past apex, things flatten out. It's safe to go out again. Although that's, I don't think it's going to be a turn on the switch, as Fauci said the other day. It's not just going to be hitting the switch and everyone go back to normal. It's going to be some kind of stage thing. But as you look forward into the practice, and given that so much of what you do is elective, what do you see? What do you envision 3 to 6 to 9 months from now? What changes are you thinking about making given what happened with Corona? And, what's your outlook for elective services overall?
Well, there's a tremendous pent-up demand for what I normally do. I think when we get the green light, women are going to see their hairdresser, their manicurist, and their dermatologist. I'm not sure what the order is. It depends on the woman. But women really do not consider what I do for them non-essential. They are hopping mad that they can't see me. I've had them ask me to come to their houses, but I don't want to do anything I've been very, very compliant because I wanted to do my part in making sure that we did everything we could to contain this so that we could move forward more quickly. What I see down the road as far as probable permanent changes is before I didn't wear a mask when I was injecting a patient. Even though I was very close, I have a magnifying lighted mirror that was always between me and the patient. But I think in addition to that, I will also always use a mask. I believe that we will probably have some alteration in how we book patients and how we communicate with patients about how their appointment is tracking. so that there's not a lot of waiting room or reception area time where people can congregate, unless we only have maybe two, and they can have easily the 6 foot difference in space. So we may have more people be told to wait in your car, and we will text you as soon as you can come straight in. I think we'll do a lot of those things. I think we'll probably do them for a short term. And then as time goes on and we see what's happening with this virus, and hopefully they get a better handle on it and there's less fear because of the unknown. You know, the flu is vicious too, but we know what we're dealing with the flu. This was a completely different animal, and it is different from any other coronavirus that we've seen. We don't know why that is, and we don't know why it was kept secret by the Chinese for so long before so there's a lot of questions that really need to be answered. I think we obviously need a vaccine, and we need to have firm treatments in place so that people can know that if they would get it, that they wouldn't die from it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna flip that around. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns, but okay, in your time, in the available time you've had now, what's one thing you started doing that even once this is over, you're gonna keep doing? Like you're never gonna go back to the old way.
Well, I will always use my old way of taking care of my patients.
Okay.
And the way that I can take care of my patients is in person. It is virtually impossible to do a really good skin check unless you can touch the lesion, feel the lesion, put light on the lesion, and really evaluate it.
Mm-hmm.
So in person is essential. So I'm always going to go back to that, but I think we can change non-essential visits to telemedicine. And for example, I see a teenager and I put them on an acne protocol. Normally, I would have that teenager come back in 6 weeks. We will probably begin using telemedicine for that follow-up appointment.
Mm-hmm.
We can pretty well look at acne through a screen, and we can check on them and ask them the appropriate questions and document them. And I think we'll do better getting insurance to cover telemedicine. So I think that telemedicine is going to become an integral and daily part of everybody's routine. It's just not going to be my entire routine. I'm going to use it selectively, but before I never used it at all.
Well, there's change right there. And, you know, you've been a teacher as part of your career, as you said, with cosmetic boot camp. So, you know, what words of wisdom or advice do you have for those, for other doctors out there, dermatologists and other specialists who are listening to this? What would you tell them about our current situation and where we'll get to?
Well, I do have a little bit of history to draw upon. In my practice, I was closed for 4 months after Katrina. And I was in an area, I was the only dermatologist that was out of business that long, because I had 6 feet of water in the ground floor of the office space that I was in for 3 weeks. So electrical was ruined, the elevators were ruined. It took the energy company 4 months to get me electricity. So 4 months later, when I got electricity, I went to my office and I was there from 8 to 5 every day. Some days I only saw 5 people. And the reason that was because I still didn't have internet, and I didn't have phones for another 2 or 3 months. I didn't have an elevator for 2 or 3 months. And I literally had patients who saw lights on in the building, come up 2 flights of stairs, stick their head in the door and go, "Are y'all back?" with such hope in their heart. And so basically I became a walk-in clinic. The word got around that I was back, that I was, and it was very heartening to hear how many people told me that when I came back, they knew that the area that I lived in would come back. It was sort of like a beacon of hope. Mm-hmm. That, you know, if she can do it, we can do it. Mm-hmm. So I would tell people out there that if you have provided good care to your patients are waiting for you to be back at work. They are waiting to see you, and you will catch up. It's going to be a tough, it's going to be a very tough 2 or 3 month period. And then the next 2 or 3 months will be better, but it's not going to be where you were. But in a year, you'll be up and running and you'll catch up. You will resurge again. You will be thriving again. Just continue to do all the good things you were doing before and take care of your patients. Take care of them as people, not as diagnoses. And when you do that, your patients will return to you in droves.
Mary Lupo, always great to talk to you. Thanks so much for spending some time, and appreciate your words of counsel.
Thank you.
All right.